Hello, everybody. Welcome back to the channel. This is Angry Jay here again. I'm back with yet another NHL team breakdown as I will be breaking down the Detroit Red Wings today, and they are my favorite team in NHL 94 to use. They are not my favorite team in real life, obviously being a San Jose Sharks fan. There's way too many playoff matchups for me to be a fan of them, but I do respect their team, and in 94 they are incredibly fun to use, as we'll soon find out why. In this time, Detroit was really starting to come into its own after a long period in the 70s and 80s where they were really struggling as a franchise. They eventually drafted Steve Yzerman, and then as the years passed by, they became more and more competitive with him as their captain, and he had a great career, and Detroit obviously became a great team, but they had their struggles at first, especially in the playoffs. 92, 93 was no different for them in this regard. They went 47, 28, and 9 in the Norris division. This was good for second place and 103 points. But they quickly met their fate in the playoffs as they lost their division semifinal matchup to the Toronto Maple Leafs. This was kind of par for the course for Detroit in this time. They would have just dominant regular seasons, but then falter in the playoffs. I mean, they did the same thing in 93, 94, where they, top team in the Western Conference, lost to San Jose Sharks in the first round. Then the year after that, I believe they made it to the finals and lost to the Devils. And then the year after that, then they finally broke through with a victory. And actually not after that, because the Avalanche won, but after that. So in 97, Detroit finally got their Stanley Cup. It was a long time coming for them, but they had a lot of great teams in the meantime, especially in the regular season, and their persistence finally paid off. So in this game, they have a very good team, but they only have a low home ice advantage, which means they don't really get any bonuses at home. They have to rely on the penalties that their opponents receive on the road in order to gain any sort of advantage. So it's kind of a unique thing for a very dominant team in this game to have a low home ice advantage. But when you take them out on the road, they have a low road ice disadvantage, which means Detroit's not going to have any penalties to their ratings. Generally speaking, you'll only have to deal with your opponent's home ice advantage. So if you're going against a Dallas on the road, as Dallas has a low home ice advantage, Detroit will actually be even with a team on the road, which is something that doesn't happen very often in this game. So Detroit is a tier 1 team, and I really believe that they're the number 1 tier team. So they're at the very tippy top of the entire NHL 94 ladder. You can use them in matchups against Chicago, Buffalo, and Montreal. And you can stretch them out against Vancouver, but that's more if you select them in a matchup in a tournament, your opponent's going to take Detroit and you're going to get Vancouver, and Detroit's just a better Vancouver, really. So that's why I don't really think Vancouver is a great matchup for them, even though they're in the same tier. It's just that Detroit's essentially the same team, but better. So that's the real issue with that. Some of Detroit's strengths: they have the best offense in the game, and it's a very balanced one. They have 3 forwards that can all score, pass, and stick handle, and they have a couple defensemen who are definitely able to fill the back of the net as well. They have elite skating, with very high agility with a lot of these players. So they're fast, they're nimble, they're just dangerous even when they don't have the puck, because they can always stay in the play. They have excellent stick handlers. So if you want to go dangle in the slot or try and create plays by just playing smash mouth hockey, Detroit is definitely capable of that. They are a strong weight bug checking team, so they take advantage of the weight bug that is in the NHL 94 game by default on the Genesis version only. This allows lighter weight players to check heavier weight players when the heavier player has the puck. And because of Detroit's offense, you're never really out of a game. Even if you give up 4 or 5 early goals, Detroit has enough firepower to bring you back in, so you never feel like you're in a hopeless situation. Some weaknesses for Detroit, and they do certainly have some big ones. Its goaltending is weak, especially in Tier 1. It's down near the bottom with Vancouver in terms of their goaltending ability. They don't have a lot of CB checking options either, especially up front. They're very limited there, and on defense they have a couple options, but they're not exactly overwhelming in terms of effectiveness. They are prone to giving up odd man rushes because they are so heavily focused on offense that defense can just be an afterthought, and they don't really have the goaltending to back that up, so it can really compound itself in issues. They have little depth at forward. They have a couple of interesting options, but they're more just defensive-minded players, or they're serious steps down in skill from what they do offer on their top line. and that is Detroit's advantage. Is their forwards are just unbelievably good, and once you start whittling away at that, it becomes a weakness. And then lastly, the defense can be a little bit slow, especially if you steer away from Paul Coffey. Not everybody likes Paul Coffey. We'll get into that in a little bit as well. But the defense, if you take him out, is definitely a slower one. So let's go ahead and go over some line combinations. And for Detroit, it's not that confusing, really. It's pretty much just use the three guys that are already here in whatever order that fits your style of play. So Yzerman, he's your fastest player. You can put him in the center if you want to use him one-on-one, or if you can put him on the wing if you want to use him as a playmaker. Cicerelli's your best shooter, but he's perfectly fine out on the wing as well. And then Fedorov's just kind of your straight across the board, above average player. He's very skilled. He's got good agility, but he's definitely not as good of a shooter or as good of a shooter as Cicerelli or Yzerman for that fact. And he's not as good of a skater as Yzerman. So Fedorov just kind of fills out that other spot more so than you'll be making your decisions based on where you want Yzerman and Cicerelli more or less. I tend to switch guys around, but if I had to go with just one combination, I'd probably go with Cicerelli on the left, leave Yzerman at the center, and just move Fedorov over to the right wing. I really feel like this is their best combination, especially if they're going against a team like Vancouver or even maybe Buffalo. If you're going against a stronger goalie, I might be inclined to put Cicerelli in the center so that his shot power can be more easily utilized, but that's really up to the user's discretion. Let's go ahead and look at Dino Cicerelli to start. He is a very fine option with 5 agility, 4 speed. If you're unfamiliar with the rating system in NHL 94, I left a description, the rating system in the description below this video, so feel free to reference that if you're confused at all by what I'm referring to. So Dino Cicerelli, he's a right-handed option, so you're going to have him on his off wing if you leave him on the left wing, which means he's going to have a really good opportunity to just rip slap shots if he is left unattended. And I don't usually put my guys on the opposite wing, but in this case, I definitely will with Dino because his shot is just dominating. And he has 4 offensive awareness, 2 defensive awareness. So he's going to be definitely focusing on offense, which is what you want with your 5 shot power, 5 shot accuracy shooter. He is tied for the most effective shooter in the game with Tomas Sandstrom, Ray Bourque, and I'm probably forgetting, Jeremy Roenick as well. He is just lights out when it comes to shooting, and if you need to be taking advantage of a shot because that's his main strength. He also has 4 passing, so he's no slouch out on the wing, and he has 5 stick handling. So really, he's a very versatile player. The only problem is he just doesn't have 5 speed, so he's not this elite burner, but the 5 agility is definitely nice to make people miss with. So that's why I feel so comfortable just putting him wherever you feel best about him because he's just a dominant force on offense. And he's 180 pounds, so people are going to have a very hard time trying to weight bug check him. If your opponent does not know how to CB check reverses the weight bug check, allowing heavier players to check lighter players with the puck. Cicerelli's just going to be able to run around and do whatever he wants, really, because of the 5 stick handling, the elite skating, and the low weight. But if your opponent doesn't know how to use the CB check, you'll have to be a little bit more judicious with him, and I'd probably lean towards putting him out on the wing as he's not as resilient as Yzerman. But Cicerelli's just an absolute beast. He's incredible on defense. He's a fantastic weight bug checker as he's very low weight, and he's just a very good player. So you definitely want to keep him involved on both sides of the ice, but especially on offense because that's just where he shines the most. Next up, Steve Yzerman. He is your all-star player. He's definitely a top 5 player in this game, possibly top 3, and probably my second best player, I think. I tend to like McGillney, then Yzerman, then Roenick, but that's just me. A lot of people put Yzerman probably 3rd place. He has 6 agility and 5 speed, so he is one of the better skaters in the game. He's only really behind McGillney in terms of effectiveness with his skating, but absolutely fantastic skater with the right-handed shot. 6 offensive awareness, 4 defensive awareness. He's going to be filling out that slot area nicely when he comes into the offensive zone. His shooting isn't as effective as Cicerelli's, but it's pretty darn close. 4 shot power, 5 accuracy, very good shooter. He's got 5 passing and 5 stick handling as well, so he's very comfortable in any area of the offensive zone. He is just primed to do a lot of damage on the scoreboard. Not as resilient against weight bug checking or CB checking, or excuse me, not as resilient against weight bug checking as Dino Cicerelli, as Roenick will be able to body check Yzerman consistently, but it doesn't really matter in a lot of situations. The Irishman is still going to be able to just run around, and his upgrade in agility and speed make him that much more elusive. So Yzerman, fantastic option on offense, just an amazing center. He can really do it all, one-on-one, breakaways, slap shots, dekes, you name it, he's going to do it. If you want to put him on the wing and put Cicerelli in the center, I mean, that's just perfectly fine as well, as I've said a few times already. I just really want to emphasize that with this team, it's really on your comfort level where you want to put your guys. It's not so much about this guy has to go here, this guy has to go there, and then that's the best way to do it. It's like, just do whatever you want. There's no wrong way to use Detroit if you leave these three guys out there. And Yzerman's a fantastic weight bug checker on defense as well. So just keep him involved. And I think he's a better center than Cicerelli because he's just a more well-balanced player and a better skater. So lastly, Sergei Fedorov. Somehow he's the weak link of this line if there ever was one, but he's still an incredible player in his own right. 5 agility, 4 speed, so same exact skating as Cicerelli. Left-handed shot, so he's going to be on his off wing as well. He's more than capable as a slap shooter as well, so I don't have any issues putting him on his wing. And with their agility, they can deke from their opposite wing. It doesn't matter. 4 offensive awareness, 4 defensive awareness, so a little low on the offense, but still nice and balanced there. 4 shot power, 4 shot accuracy, so he's the weakest shooter, but still just a very competent shooter. And then the 5 passing, 5 stick handling just make him a fantastic distributor of the puck. I think he's the best winger on the team. Excuse me. Because he's just a pure setup man, talents. 196 pounds, so he's a middleweight, so he's going to be fairly resilient to some CB checking and some weight bug checking, but you really need to know who you're matched up against to be confident. But, if nothing else, at least you have the 5 stick handling, which will help you shake off some body checks and poke checks, regardless, just because he has the higher stick handle rating. He's a decent defensive player. He's not the best. Certainly a downgrade from Yzerman and Cicerelli. The only reason people will take Fedorov out of the lineup is because they want a more defensive-minded player. And there's nothing wrong with that. I just think you're giving up too much to get a little extra defense. But that's just my thought. And the defensive player that people will go with is Dallas Drake. He is the defensive-minded forward among this team. 4 agility, 4 speed, left-handed shot. So he's probably going to be better on his left wing, but you're not really going to be using him on offense, so it doesn't really matter. He's got 3 offensive awareness, 4 defensive awareness, 3 shot power, 3 shot accuracy, so pretty average stuff there. 3 passing, 3 stick handling. So obviously, huge downgrade in skill, huge downgrade in offense, effectiveness, just overall. I can't really recommend taking Fedorov out for Drake, but a lot of people do it because Drake is just an incredible weight bug checker. He's 132 pounds. He's the same weight as Jeremy Roenick, and we all know what Jeremy Roenick is capable of on defense. He just runs around and knocks people out, takes the puck, and does what he wants. With Dallas Drake, he's not as effective of a skater. He will be good on defense, yes, but once he gets the puck on his stick, he's nowhere near as dangerous as Roenick, so you can't expect anything like that out of Drake. But if you're going against a player who does not know how to CB check, Dallas Drake does become more viable. But if your opponent knows how to CB check, Drake's going to be on his back a lot because he's not elusive enough, and a lot of people can CB check him. So just be careful with that if you do want to use Drake. If you want a more offensive-minded substitute, say an injury pops up, Paul Yzerman, best bet. 4 agility, 4 speed. He's one of the few players on this roster that can keep up with the All-Stars forward unit that they have. 4 offensive awareness, 4 defensive awareness, so just like Fedorov in that regard. 3 shot power, 4 shot accuracy, so he's competent. 4 passing, 4 stick handling. Again, just a nice, competent player. If this was a tier 2 or tier 3 team, he'd be a very nice second or third forward, but in Detroit, he's simply just their sub. 196 pounds. You're not going to get a whole lot of difference in defense or offense from him when it comes to physical play than Sergei Fedorov, but Sergei Fedorov has better skills, so that's why he's obviously the better choice in that regard. There are a couple other options with the Red Wings that you can look at, but I tend to stay away from them because there's just no real need. Kozlov, Vyacheslav, 4 agility, 3 speed is your main weight bug substitute for Drake, or for if you just want to go really crazy and put a very defensive line out there with just pure weight buggers. Kozlov can definitely be a part of that, but he's nothing more than depth in my mind. 2 offensive awareness, 2 defensive awareness, 3 shot power, 3 accuracy, 3 passing, 3 stick handling. So a very modestly skilled player. 180 pounds. Just as light as Dino Ciccarelli, so he's going to be a very effective weight bug checker, but he just doesn't have the skating really to use it effectively in this tier. It's going to be very difficult for him. And then if your opponent knows their CB check, again, it's going to be a huge issue for Vyacheslav Kozlov to stay on his skates. And lastly, Bob Probert is your only CB option, really. He has 4 agility, 3 speed, 3 offensive awareness, 3 defensive awareness, 3 shot power, just 2 accuracy, though. So he's really inconsistent as a shooter. 3 passing, 2 stick handling, 228 pounds, and 4 checking means he is a just intimidating presence with the CB check. But unfortunately, there is no fighting in 94. That would be Probert's number 1 skill. So Probert, he's not even as fun as he was in the 93 version of NHL, because you could fight in 93. 94, you can't fight. So Probert loses a lot of his luster here. But if you really want a CB checking option, he's Detroit's best bet. I don't want to put him in. I want to leave Fedorov in. So let me just do that before I make that mistake and start the game with him in the roster. So let's go ahead and look at this defense now. This is the nice thing about Detroit's defense is that there's a lot of options. The bad thing about this defense is that there's a lot of options, and it can make people do crazy things, like taking Paul Coffey out, because Paul Coffey is just a very unique defenseman, really. And he gives this defensive corps a real identity that no one else can. So let's go ahead and talk about him first, because I think he's the real controversial guy here. He's got 6 agility, 5 speed. So just as good of a skater as Yzerman, but playing defense. So he can always get himself back into the play. 4 offensive awareness, 3 defensive awareness. He's kind of one of those weirdos with the higher offensive awareness on defense. So he might not always be in his own zone, or might not always be trying to pick off passes in the slot. You really want to use him in user mode if you can, to help with those things. He does have 4 shot power, but only 1 accuracy, so it really isn't very appealing to try and get his slap shot going or get him going too much on offense, just because he's a very inefficient finisher. But he does have 5 passing and 6 stick handling, so he is a wonderful playmaker from the back. You get him going, he can throw those long bomb passes to your streaking forwards very accurately, very powerfully, and it should just kickstart your offense and give you a lot of odd man rushes. So that's why I think he's just someone you have to keep out there, because he is capable of just starting your offense, being elusive in his own zone, and getting back in the play on defense when otherwise no other defenseman on this team would be able to. He does have a bit of a caveat, though. If you're not comfortable with using heavier weight players, Coffey might be an issue. He's 212 pounds, and he's only a 2 checker, so he's not going to be a very good CB checker. He'll be okay against some of the lighter guys like Roenick and Pat LaFontaine, but it's not his strength. It's not his forte. And if your opponent has a lot of weight bug checkers and you're not very elusive with Paul Coffey's going to spend a lot of time on his back. So this is where some people will feel inclined to remove him from going up. Also, 5 speed, 6 agility can be a little tough to handle in tight areas on defense, especially if you're over aggressive as a player. When you sell out with Paul Coffey on defense, you really sell out, because you move further away from the goal, because his better skating ratings take him further away from the goal than, say, a guy with 3-3 skating, who just when you move them, they don't move as much. Coffey, when you touch the D-pad, he goes, because he's just very responsive. So that can also be another reason why people don't like putting him in on defense. But if you can, I think this is one guy you shouldn't be taking out of this lineup. He just brings way too many unique things that are very positive, and I definitely love having him out there. So Coffey on the right, and then on the left side, number 1 option, Nick Lidstrom. You want to take out Chiasson, and Lidstrom, he's got 4 agility, 3 speed. So he's definitely much more technical skater than than Coffey when it comes to just shadowing defenders in close, in the slot area. Lidstrom's going to be a little bit just tighter to control. He's got 3 offensive awareness, 4 defensive awareness, so pretty standard stuff there. 4 shot power, 1 accuracy, so same thing as Coffey. It's nice to have that slap shot power, but you're not going to use it a lot probably. 4 passing, 4 stick handling, so strong there. 180 pounds. One of the lighter defensemen in the game, which means he's one of the most effective weight bug checking defensemen in the game. This is what makes him a very special defenseman. This is what makes him a great tier 1 defender. But now with the CB check involved, he can be a target for guys like Steve Larmer. So you just have to keep your head up a little bit more with Lidstrom when you have the puck with him. So he just takes a little bit more know-how when you have the puck, but on defense, he's still very effective, and I think the obvious number 1 option to go with. But there are obviously other players on this team that are very good as well. First, Steve Cheveldae, the default starter, is nothing wrong with him. He's got 4 agility, 3 speed, so same ratings as Lidstrom in that regard. He's got 4 offensive awareness, 4 defensive awareness, 4 shot power, 1 accuracy. Seems to be a recurring theme here for the Detroit defenseman. He has 3 passing, 4 stick handling, so a little downgrade in the passing from Lidstrom. But he's definitely a different defenseman because of his weight. 212 pounds makes him a CB checker. If you don't know how to CB check, don't use him. Lidstrom's perfectly fine. He's a great weight bug option. Only a 3 checker, 212 pounds, 4 agility, means he's good at CB checking. He's not the monster that James Patrick or Ray Bork is. He's just a nice CB checking option. If you want a CB checker, but you want to maintain Lidstrom out there on one side, Cheveldae's perfectly fine as just being a balancing act. In terms of having 1 lightweight defenseman, 1 heavyweight defenseman, there's nothing wrong with that. But then you take out Coffey, and I have an issue with that. So, but Cheveldae's fine. He's just very vanilla, I think. When you can have something as exciting as Coffey. Another option, Vlad Konstantinov, 3 agility, 3 speed, right-handed defenseman. Not a lot of right-handers on this defense, so if you want a natural right-handed defenseman on the right side, Konstantinov is your only option. But at least he's a decent one. He's got 2 offensive awareness, 4 defense awareness, so he's going to really focus in on defense, which is something that Detroit kind of needs because they don't always pay attention to it. He's got 3 shot power, 1 accuracy, 3 passing, and 3 stick handling. So perfectly fine player, 188 pounds, weight bug checker for sure, but he can CB check a little bit as well. He can definitely CB check Jeremy Roenick, Theo Fleury, Doug Gilmour, those type of guys, those lightweight guys with his forechecking. And he's a perfectly fine defenseman. And in AI mode, he's going to be a little bit more aggressive as well physically because of that higher check rating. So that's kind of nice. I could talk about all these defensemen really, but they're all more or less the same. Yves Racine, very competent defenseman. 4 shot power, 188 pounds. Pretty much a Lidstrom clone, but just a little bit less skill. Marcal, essentially a Yves Racine clone, just a little less skill. Steve Conroy, he's one of your other CB checking defensemen, as well as Brad McCrimmon, but they're just bottom of the roster fodder. But they're still perfectly competent if you ever had to use them for whatever reason. But your top 6 here, one of the deepest in the game, lots of options, very, very competent defense with even a little bit of ability for excitement. Please don't bench Paul Coffey. Please. I really like Paul Coffey. I don't know if you've noticed. Lastly, talk about the goalie real quick. Tim Cheveldae, league average goalie. Nothing to get excited about here. 4 agility, 4 puck control, 4 rating on his stick right, 3 on his left, 4 on his glove right, 4 on his glove left. 188 pounds, middleweight goalie, 4 agility. He's going to be perfectly fine. He's not doing anything incredible. He's not going to kill you. Fine. That's it. Tier 1, though, that's kind of weak. Unfortunately, but he's overall still. He shouldn't be losing you games left and right. If he does, it's because you left him all alone in the defensive zone because you gave up too many breakaways. That's where he's going to hurt you because he's not going to save you in those situations. So let's go ahead and talk about the strategy for Detroit here real quick. With Detroit, you want to roll out the big guns. You don't want to just try and focus on getting Yzerman going or Cistrelli going. Just use all your guys. They're fantastic. The best thing you can do with Detroit is make your opponent guess where the offense is going to come from second to second instead of just focusing on one player. You want them to go like, okay, Fedorov has the puck. I have to respect Fedorov and everything he can do. Oh crap, he passed the puck to Yzerman. I have to respect everything he can do. Oh, just make your opponent panic, and then they're going to commit themselves too much on defense, and then you're going to have all these skilled players to pass the puck to or shoot the puck with, and you can't go wrong. So work that puck around. Use everybody that you got because they're all amazing. You want to also come back with numbers with Detroit. Your defensemen, especially Coffey, may not always be inclined to come back on their own. So when you lose the puck, you don't always necessarily need to go after the puck carrier on the opposing team immediately. You might be more inclined to just start tracking back into the defensive zone on your own, because you're going to be facing a lot of tier 1 teams with Detroit, Buffalo, Chicago, and they all have fantastic players that can pass the puck from their own zone and just kickstart a 2-on-1 or a breakaway chance. And if your defensemen aren't back to begin with, you're going to get burned. So if do you think there's a pretty good chance you can't forecheck somebody effectively, just turn back into your own zone. Try and get a guy or two back there, so that if that big home run pass comes your way, you're there to pick it off instead of trying to take manual goalie control with Cheveldae and then getting deked and giving up a goal. So don't get too crazy with Detroit if you think the chances are that you're not going to be successful in getting the puck back. With Detroit, you want to really attack your opponent at home, because your team's still very strong at home. They're not going to have to deal with a lot of penalties, on the road. They're not going to have a lot of penalties on the road. So feel free to do whatever you usually do with Detroit. At home, they can be a little bit weird sometimes. They'll get some real clunkers of games at home, especially if you go against like Dallas or Edmonton or anybody with a low road ice disadvantage, because in that case, there is no home ice advantage if you're facing off against a low road ice disadvantage team, because just the presets in the game, there's nothing there for Detroit to gain. So sometimes Detroit throws a clunker out there, and you just kind of have to work with it and understand it and play a little bit more close to the vest and pick your spots a little bit better. I know I personally lost some pretty big games because Detroit was pretty normal that game, and the opponent had good ratings on the road, and I just didn't adjust in time because usually you go, oh, Detroit, they just do whatever they want. Well, those games they don't. With Detroit in Tier 1, this is going to be a situation where you're going to need to use your manual goalie more often, so don't forget about that. And there's a lot of very effective shooters in this tier, so Cheveldae can get beat more often in AI mode than you might see in other tiers. Like a guy like Hextall, Quebec's goalie. He's Tier 3. There's not as many dangerous shooters in Tier 3. Hextall and Cheveldae are essentially the same goalie. Same with Joseph in Tier 5. They're essentially the same goalie, Joseph and Cheveldae. But in Tier 1, Cheveldae is going to look worse because there's more dangerous shooters. So use your manual goalie. And lastly, with Detroit, stay unpredictable. You got all these guys that can pass the puck and skate and do whatever. Don't just give it to one guy and try and do slap shots all game long, or try and do one-timers all game long because they have the talent to do it. No, continue to do everything that you have in your repertoire and try and change things up on your opponent. And then your opponent's really going to have no clue how to guard you and the Detroit Red Wings, because they are straight up scary when allowed to do so. So, I didn't realize I didn't have any music on this whole time. So, hopefully listening to me wasn't too painful. If it was, you probably already turned it off by now. But let's go ahead and jump into this game. And got one of the more common matchups you'll see in Tier 1. I think this is probably the two highest skilled teams in the game, Detroit and Buffalo. At least their forwards are the highest skilled, I think, overall. I mean, obviously, a lot of people think, oh, Chicago's got the best forwards because they got Roenick. Well, they may have the best forward in the game in some people's eyes. The rest of the unit in Chicago is not quite up to snuff, whereas Detroit, I think they take the cake because all their guys are very good shooters, and Buffalo's, they fall a little short in that category, especially Dale Hawerchuk. He is not a good shooter by any stretch of the imagination. If you have certain lineups out there with Detroit, you'll actually have 5 guys on the ice with a better shot than Dale Hawerchuk, because Dale Hawerchuk's shot is that bad. So I just think it makes Detroit more dangerous, because as soon as they enter the offensive zone, they can score the puck, because they have Cicerelli, 5-shot power. He can score from pretty much anywhere. Buffalo does not have a 5-shot power player, so that's one strike against them there. And then Detroit also has very accurate shooters. They have 2 guys with 5 accuracy, another one with 4. You just don't get a lot of teams with that type of accuracy. I mean, there's Quebec does have that sort of thing going on, where they have some guys like Sakic, Sundin. They both have 5-shot accuracy, and then they'll put a guy like Nolan or Ricci out there, and even Kovalenko and Kamensky. He's another great shooter, but Detroit just takes the cake. They can also skate like the wind. They stick handle like crazy. They're very hard to take out the puck. So in this game, when you have 5 or 6 stick handling with a player, which all of Detroit's forwards have that, and as well as Paul Coffey, they can get a little animation. Hopefully we'll see that at some point in this game where if they get poke checked or body checked, they'll do this little wiggle move, or where it looks like they're going to fall over, but they don't, and the puck stays on their stick. So, and that doesn't really happen if your players have 4 stick handling or below. So Detroit is not only hard to catch, but they're also hard to take the puck off their stick when you do catch them. It's very frustrating to play against, and it's, I think, a big advantage, because how do you score goals? You score goals when you have the puck. It's harder to take the puck off your stick, you're probably going to score more goals because you're going to get more chances to do so. And that's, why Detroit, they're never out of the game, because they can just spin circles around you all game long, and they're going to get their chances. You're going to have a very hard time denying Detroit their chances. It's going to take some incredible manual goaltending and a lot of luck to keep them off the board for extended periods of time, because there's just too much talent. I mean, that's just an instance right there where, all my forwards, I know they can shoot, so I'm not afraid to try, a wide array of plays that I'd be hesitant to try with other teams. Like with Buffalo, if I had Howard Chuck on the right wing there for that one-timer that I just hit with Fedorov, well, I have Chiasson out there, I didn't even notice that. I wouldn't be trying to score that one-timer with Howard Chuck, because his shot ratings are very poor, and it would likely be unsuccessful, so it's just kind of a wasted chance. Why make that pass if I know it's not going to be successful? So with a guy like Fedorov on the wing and Ciccarelli just dish off to, I know I could either one. They're going to get their goal on that. So that's what makes them dangerous. They make opportunities out of nothing, and when you can do that, it makes you even that much more difficult to defend. Oh boy, that was almost a goal. And so one nice thing about having a guy like Lidstrom in this tier is that when you face off against Buffalo, Lidstrom can weight bug check Alexander Mogilny pretty effectively. So he can be a bit of a game changer back there. And then Coffey, in his best of games, he can CB check Mogilny as well. So it's kind of nice to have that option to where you can play Mogilny physically, maybe intimidate your opponent into doing some things they might not do otherwise with Mogilny, or at least stop them from just trying to storm into the zone and deke around your whole team. Those two guys against Buffalo can be pretty effective against Mogilny. It's a little bit trickier against some of these other teams though, like Chicago with Roenick and Vancouver with Bure, or even Montreal when they put their 5-weight lineup out there, like Damphus, LeBeau, and Savard. That can be a very difficult lineup for Detroit to defend, because they're just technical skaters, and they have high stick handling, especially Damphus and Savard. And not scoring enough goals here, I don't think. Doesn't help that I have 2 guys in the box and can't make a pass. So in those matchups with those lighter weight teams, you kind of have to play a little bit more sensible with Detroit. You can't just try and body check everybody and take advantage of people physically, because the people you're playing against are too similar in weight, and they're also very fast. Especially Vancouver is very fast, and they're going to be difficult to maintain. So you want to just kind of protect your slot and make sure you have guys coming back into the zone, because the more obstacles you put in front of these skilled teams, the harder they're going to have to work, the more time it gives you to get your guy back into the defensive zone and make an effective play, or maybe get goalie control and make a big save. Because if you're just giving up opportunities right away, it's very difficult to, just hurting everybody. It makes it very difficult to react with your manual goalie immediately and then make the save, because in Genesis you have to hold the B button a little bit before you get goalie control, so it takes time. And if you can give yourself a little bit more time by having an extra guy there to play defense or steering your opponent away from where they want to go immediately, then you can give yourself that chance to react to things that you wouldn't have otherwise. because it's very tempting with Detroit just to play fast, just to play physical, and focus on offense. And I mean, like right there, I'm already focusing on offense. I was trying to get a breakout chance there for Coffey, but wow, cannot score. So, you know, it's important in Tier 1 to remember that, yeah, you have a very dangerous team, but so are all the other teams. That's why they're Tier 1. And they can hurt you real bad, especially with Detroit, because they don't have the goaltending to really keep them in the game like, say, Chicago or Montreal does, where you might get that extra save from Wall or Belfour, and that keeps you in a game. Whereas Detroit, you're just giving yourself more work to do on the scoreboard because your goalie just couldn't contain an elite forward on a breakaway or a one-time shot. So those are really just the only pitfalls with Detroit. I mean, otherwise they're just an absolutely amazing team. I think best team in the game on the Genesis version, not in the Super Nintendo version. Super Nintendo version, they're pretty good, but they're definitely not, you know, the #1 team in the game. They're not the team that everybody's just, you know, dying to get in Classic League or even in tournament matchups because, like I said, Detroit's very popular. And, you know, there's a very good reason, just because they are a fantastic team with lots of options on offense and a defensive corps that you can really mold to your own liking. You know, with just tons and tons of options. But please keep Paul Coffey in there. Please, because he's awesome. And if you know how to use him, that's a huge advantage. Man, why are you running into the goalie there, Yzerman? Well, Buffalo's really putting up a heated effort here. They cannot score a lot of goals right now. But see, that's why you got to use Coffey when you get the chance, because if you catch guys turned around in the defensive zone, he's fast enough to just leave them in the dust. And then when he's in close, his one-shot accuracy isn't so bad. He's actually pretty good. He will still miss some opportunities, of course, but the closer you are, the less egregious misses you'll have. And he's a great deker because of his, you know, wonderful skating ability. And there's just really this nice shot power. He is really a game breaker for Detroit with his 5-shot power in this tier, because he can blow away those skilled goalies like Fuhrer, Wall, Belfour. His shot power is an equalizer, where, you know, Fedorov, Yzerman, great shooters, but they only have 4-shot power. Sometimes if they're cold, they have issues blowing it by the goalie, even with their accuracy. So Yzerman, I think, is just a nice ace to have up the sleeve for anybody using Detroit in Tier 1. And let's see if I can get an 11th goal. See if I can get the mercy rule here on Buffalo with just seconds to spare, and it does not look like it's going to happen. So, but that's Tier 1 for you. The goalies can make things look closer than they might otherwise be. I mean, I think I could have won that game 15 or 20 to 1 if it was a regular goalie, but sure made some really nice stops, and then it's definitely hard getting the puck off of Buffalo's stick, you know, just like it is in Detroit. When you're playing against Detroit, it's hard to get the puck off their stick. So that's Detroit. That's, I think, the best team in the game and my favorite team to use. Hope you enjoyed this video and learned something from it. So feel free to leave a comment or any question down below. If you have any, I'll definitely get to them when I get the chance. And hope you guys continue to watch these. I definitely enjoy producing them and giving you guys something to listen to, whether at work or you're relaxing at home or whatever it may be. So hope to hear from you guys, and I'll be back with another one. I'll be back with Toronto coming up next. So see you guys later.